And it's just to alert you, the first presentation, the slides will be in English, but the presentation will be given in Portuguese. So for anybody who is not fluent in understanding Portuguese, please be sure to have the necessary equipment from in front of the door. So I would welcome all of you to this session, which is about biomethane and biohydrogen. So both of feedstocks or energy carriers which play a key role in the energy system and also in the transformation of the energy system, but even beyond the energy system. I think they are also very important for the whole bioeconomy. They are universal energy carriers and which can be applied for all kinds of applications, so for heating and cooling, for electricity, for transport fuels. They allow a smooth transition from the existing energy carriers to the new ones. They can be used in synergies with other renewable energy sources. And for all of this, as you already heard in this conference, there are huge ambitions for the next upcoming years. I just mentioned the biomethane plan of the European Union with 35 billion cubic meters of biomethane by 2030, which I think would be something like a tenfold increase of the current production. And it's just 6 years left, so that's quite an interesting approach. And today, in this session for the next 90 minutes, we have 5 presenters, so 2 from Europe, 3 from Brazil. And so I think you will get a broad range of very good and interesting presentations. And we will start with the first one, which is Rogério Meneghetti, and well, my Portuguese is very poor. I'm sorry for the pronunciation, from Itaipu, Binacional, Brazil, about bioenergy in Brazil, history of regulation. Please, Rogério, you have the floor.
So, good morning, everyone. My name is Rogério Meneghetti. My slides are in Portuguese, in English, but you'll do the presentation in Portuguese, okay? Okay, how can I pass this? That's okay. Aí eu toco, em português. Bom dia. Eu vou falar um pouquinho sobre a história aqui das bioenergias no Brasil, um pouquinho da regulação e a conexão com os projetos piloto que a gente tem aqui produz aqui no Brasil e também na Itaipu. Funcionou. Bom, de forma bem breve, a Itaipu Binacional, ela é uma empresa de energia elétrica, a empresa que mais produziu energia elétrica no mundo e de forma renovável. A nossa missão é gerar energia elétrica de qualidade com o desenvolvimento social e energético atrelado desses dois países, que é o Brasil e o Paraguai. O Paraguai é dono da metade da usina da Itaipu e nós estamos em parceria com esse país, né? A usina fica no oeste do Paraná, ali naquela marca da Itaipu, ali naquela estrelinha, e nós temos um vasto reservatório que é utilizado para a produção de energia elétrica. Quando eu digo vasto, cada pessoa no mundo tem direito a 4.000 litros de água do reservatório da Itaipu. Então, realmente é um reservatório bastante grande. E nós temos uma grande área de floresta para proteger o nosso reservatório de todos os intempéries que podem chegar no reservatório e diminuir a vida útil do nosso reservatório. A vida útil do nosso reservatório é estimada em 184 anos e a ideia é que todo ano ele se renove esses 184 anos. Mas não adianta olhar só para a mata, precisa olhar também o que está próximo ao reservatório. E nessa imagem que vocês estão vendo nesse mapa, ali à esquerda nós temos o reservatório da usina e cada pontinho desse que vocês estão vendo nesse mapa é uma produção de proteína animal, ou é suíno, ou é bovino, ou é ave. Então, isso acaba produzindo muito resíduo, que se ele não for bem tratado, ele vai chegar no nosso reservatório e vai diminuir a vida útil dele. Então, foi nessa linha de pensamento que a Itaipu começou a investir nos projetos de energias renováveis, inicialmente focado no biogás, para tentar encontrar uma solução técnica para esses materiais não chegarem no nosso reservatório e não diminuir a vida útil do nosso reservatório. E, basicamente, a trajetória que os projetos têm aqui no Brasil, pensando desde o projeto piloto até ele ganhar estabilidade, ele começa assim. Pequenos projetos piloto que a gente vê que, opa, realmente funciona. E ele dá o próximo passo, que é partir para a regulação. E no momento que você tem uma boa regulação no país, os investidores entendem, opa, isso é seguro para investir. E no momento que o investidor vê que algo funciona e tem regulação que me dá segurança para investir, aí nós chegamos nos investimentos massivos e isso expande para o Brasil inteiro. E isso é bom. Isso é bom para o Brasil e é bom para o investidor. E vou apresentar agora os projetos piloto que a Itaipu apoiou e como isso repercutiu nas regulamentações. Então, em 2008, nós tivemos o primeiro projeto piloto da Itaipu, que era voltado para microgeração distribuída, que foi com biogás. Nossos parceiros, Itaipu Parktec, que é o nosso parque tecnológico que a Itaipu mantém, e o Biogas, que naquela época ainda nem existia, mas a base das pessoas que trabalharam nesse projeto deu origem ao Biogas, que é uma instituição de ciência e tecnologia que estuda sobre biogás e biometano e suas aplicações. Então, o primeiro projeto piloto, até nesse momento da história, se você quisesse fazer uma geração distribuída e conectar com a rede, você era obrigado a fazer uma linha de transmissão até a subestação, sendo que tinha um fio passando na frente da sua casa. E isso começou com o biogás. O primeiro projeto começou com o biogás. Então, a primeira regulação veio só em 2012, 4 anos depois, que deu as condições de acesso à rede e também o sistema de net metering, compensação de energia. E a lei, o marco legal, veio só em janeiro de 2022. É muito tempo depois. Então, tudo isso começou com esse pequeno projeto piloto, que hoje a geração distribuída no Brasil chega em 99,7% dos municípios brasileiros, quase a totalidade, é claro, com o solar, mas isso começou com o biogás e lá com o projeto da Itaipu. Então, quando a gente fala nos dados atuais da ANEEL, em 2024, a gente está falando de 530 geradores e 137 megas instalados. E isso, 32% veio depois da lei da geração distribuída. E nós também temos 242 megas em centralizado em biogás, em geração centralizada. Não é muito, não é muito. Então, foi um modelo de negócio que foi mais atrelado no solar e os dados estão aqui. Quando a gente fala em solar, a gente fala em 32 gigas, quase 33, e 70% veio depois da lei. Então, como a gente diz aqui no Brasil, essa lei pegou mais para o solar do que comparado com o biogás. Mas tudo começou com um pequeno projeto piloto. Então, essa foi a linha, projeto piloto, regulação, investimentos massivos. Outro projeto interessante, a Itaipu teve a primeira frota particular de veículos movidos a biometano. A gente teve, uma época, cerca de 80 veículos. E isso começou em 2013, 2014, também com o nosso parceiro Biogas. E a regulação que equiparou o biometano ao gás natural aconteceu só em 2015. Então, muito fruto desse projeto piloto que a Itaipu fez, de mostrar que, de fato, se eu pegar o biogás, fazer o refino dele e colocar num veículo, ele funciona. E isso foi com os nossos projetos piloto. E a aldeia Itaipu, que está escrito ali na parte de cima, é um projeto que nós temos dentro da Itaipu, que nós recebemos resíduos dos restaurantes que nós temos lá dentro e apreensões da Receita Federal. Nós produzimos o biogás internamente dentro da usina, na sua região binacional. E claro, junto com o nosso parceiro Biogas, que faz a operação dela todos os dias. E a ANP trouxe a Agência Nacional de Petróleo, Gás e Biocombustíveis, algumas regulamentações ao longo do tempo. Então, em 2017 o Renova Bio, 2018 a concessão de regime, né, os requerimentos para entrar na concessão de regime para poder injetar o gás na rede, e 2022 algumas regras de qualidade de biometano. Então, de novo, projeto piloto, regulação e os investimentos. Em azul, vocês estão vendo o que já foi autorizado pela ANP para poder injetar biometano na rede. E isso é a capacidade acumulada de produção, capacidade acumulada de produção de biometano. Perfeito. E aí em 2024 e 2025 e 2026 em azul ele se mantém, porque é o que está autorizado, 614 normal metros cúbicos por dia. E em laranja é o que está ainda em construção e ainda não foi permitido pela ANP. Mas se a gente vê em 2026, se todas as 29 unidades que estão previstas para entrar em operação, a gente está falando em triplicar a capacidade atual de produção de biometano injetado na rede. Isso vem muito dessas regulamentações que estão entrando. Provavelmente nem todas as 29 vão entrar em operação até lá, mas essa expectativa é o horizonte que a gente está trabalhando. E claro que depois das leis que saíram, que eu vou comentar um pouco mais para frente, a tendência é que esse número cresça ainda mais. Outro projeto piloto que a Itaipu tem trabalhado nos últimos 10 anos é com o hidrogênio verde. Nós temos essa planta que fica também próximo, dentro do complexo da Itaipu, cerca de 1 quilômetro daquele outro projeto, daquela unidade de demonstração de biogás. E aqui nós utilizamos a própria energia elétrica da Itaipu via eletrose para produzir o hidrogênio. E nessa unidade nós fazemos a produção, o armazenamento e o uso de hidrogênio para pesquisa. Esse é o nosso intuito. A gente não busca viabilidade econômica nesses primeiros projetos piloto que a Itaipu incentiva. E aqui uma curiosidade, a UniOeste, que é a Universidade Estadual do Oeste do Paraná, que fica dentro do nosso parceiro Itaipu Parktec, está alocada lá, ela foi a única instituição do Brasil que apresentou um veículo movido a hidrogênio na competição da Shell que teve esse ano no Rio de Janeiro, se eu não me engano, e eles foram convidados para participar da categoria da competição que vai ter o ano que vem nos Estados Unidos. Mas é legal que no mesmo local nós temos desde universidades trabalhando com hidrogênio até nível de pesquisa e aplicação e serviços. Então nós temos o projeto piloto e o marco legal do hidrogênio verde, que foi desse ano, então ele é bastante recente. Ele trouxe o marco legal do hidrogênio de baixo carbono, incentivos da indústria de hidrogênio de baixo carbono, incentivos para a produção de hidrogênio de baixo carbono e o programa de desenvolvimento de hidrogênio de baixo carbono. E nessa regulamentação do Brasil ele trouxe algumas definições. Então nós temos o hidrogênio de baixo carbono, que é até 7 kg de CO2 equivalente por quilograma, para qualquer tipo de rota de produção. A gente tem um pouco mais restritivo, que é o hidrogênio renovável. Então ele também tem que ser abaixo de 7, mas ele tem que ser produzido com fontes de energia renovável, vento, solar, hidrelétrica, biomassa, etanol e outros biocombustíveis, e é aqui que o biohidrogênio entra. E nós temos o mais restritivo, que é o hidrogênio verde. Então a lei trouxe essas definições. Então o hidrogênio verde ele tem que cumprir todas as metas anteriores e tem que ser produzido via eletrólise. Então essa foi a definição que veio na nossa lei. Ela é uma lei recente, então ainda não temos os grandes investimentos aqui no Brasil. E por último, mas não menos importante, é um projeto que nós temos com diversos parceiros. Aqui eu destaco o CI Biogas, o MCTI, a cooperação alemã Via GIS, a Itaipu, o Itaipu Parktec, a Universidade Federal do Paraná e a Fundação Araucária. Então todos esses parceiros trabalharam juntos para fazer essa unidade de demonstração que é de Biocentrude voltado para a SAF. E isso está junto na nossa unidade de demonstração de biogás. Então, no mesmo espaço, nós temos a produção de biogás, 1 quilômetro distante nós temos a produção de hidrogênio verde, totalmente renovável, e depois nós temos a combinação desses dois ativos em um terceiro, que é o Biocentrude voltado para o SAF. Isso foi um evento que teve a participação de 2 ministros na inauguração dessa planta. Então foi bastante significativo para nós e, claro, para o Brasil como um todo, porque essa é a primeira planta do Brasil voltada para a produção de SAF. E a lei veio há 2 semanas atrás e ele traz a importância dos biocombustíveis para o Brasil, o incentivo de desenvolvimento e pesquisa nos biocombustíveis e a criação de demanda obrigatória de alguns biocombustíveis. Foi criado o Programa Nacional de SAF e a ideia é que a demanda obrigatória foi 1% em 2027, 2% em 2029 e 10% em 2037. Foi criado também o Programa Nacional de Diesel Verde, com a demanda de 3%, que vai ser definida pelo Comitê Nacional de Política Energética, e também sobre o biodiesel, que é diferente do diesel verde. A demanda atual é 14% e a ideia é que cresça até 2030 com 20%. E também foi criado o Programa Nacional de Descarbonização dos produtores de gás natural e os importadores e também incentivo ao biometano. e ele prevê a demanda de 1% em 2026, limitado a 10%. E isso também vai ser definido pelo Comitê Nacional de Política Energética do nosso país. Para concluir, eu queria mostrar aqui da importância dos projetos pilotos, é necessária a importância disso aqui no Brasil. Tudo começa com os pequenos projetos piloto. Isso puxa a regulação, ou a gente empurra a regulação, na verdade. Aqui no Brasil a gente tem que empurrar muitas coisas. A gente empurra a regulamentação e a regulamentação acaba atraindo investidores para o Brasil. Essa é a sequência lógica que a gente tem observado nos últimos tempos. E a Itaipu sempre acaba tendo protagonismo nesses pequenos projetos piloto. A gente compra o risco que o mercado não está a fim de comprar. As leis são ainda muito recentes, mas trouxe segurança para os investidores. Então, a nossa expectativa é que isso vai crescer muito nos próximos anos, seja para os biocombustíveis, seja para o hidrogênio verde, e a gente ainda não viu o total potencial do Brasil na produção de biocombustíveis. E, no meu entendimento, a gente está na curva ascendente ainda nessa produção, primeiro para atender o Brasil, essa é a minha visão, e depois exportar para os outros países do mundo. Bem, essa é a minha mensagem. Muito obrigado pelo tempo de vocês.
So thank you very much, Rogério, for this inspiring presentation. And I forgot to introduce myself in the beginning. So my name is Birger. I'm from the German Agency for Renewable Resources, FNR. So there's time for 2 to 3 questions, if there are any. It's always difficult to see, so I see. Oh, okay, one of our co-speakers. So Berend, please.
Yes. Question about the. Sorry, my name is Birger from TNO. Next, but the bio or the methane, it was 1% to reduce the carbon in the methane in the grid. I guess it's coming from biogas at the most, and it goes up to 10%, right? Is it achievable in Brazil to do that with biogas only?
I respond in English, but yeah, it's possible, and there is a council in Brazil that will determine the percentage of this. So in the beginning, 1%. But if the council see that's not possible, you not increase to 10%. You're still in 1% or 2%. That's the idea.
Is there any other question? Okay, please.
Olá, bom dia. Obrigada pela apresentação. Você falou da pesquisa com hidrogênio, mas você falou que ainda está em fase piloto. Mas você sabe quais seriam as principais aplicações de hidrogênio que está sendo feito na Itaipu? Se seria mesmo para o setor automobilístico ou se vai ser focado para a indústria química ou ainda não é definido?
A gente produz há 10 anos já esse hidrogênio verde, mas é bastante voltado para nível de pesquisa. Então, a gente pesquisou, por exemplo, fazer a rota inteira, como produzir de forma segura e cuidando do eletrolisador. Então, a gente conseguiu ter já rampas de como o eletrolisador está sendo desgastado ao longo do tempo, como armazenar de forma segura também, porque o hidrogênio ativo tem lá suas preocupações em cima dele. E a aplicação, no começo, a gente fez isso para geração de energia elétrica mesmo, então, fechando todo o ciclo. Mas a gente está com alguns projetos atuais que vão até 2028, que a ideia é transformar o hidrogênio em pó, para transferir, para fazer uma forma mais viável para transmitir ele a longas distâncias e também aplicação em mobilidade. Essa é a nossa ideia atual do projeto, que vai até 2028. Pelo menos, né? A ideia é renovar ele.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we have to move to the next presentation. Thank you very much again, Roger. So the next presenter will be Berend Vreugdenhil, and I think again I have problems with the pronunciation, from TNO in the Netherlands and task leader of IA Bioenergy Task 33. So about one of the key routes for biomethane production, so perspectives of biomethane from biomass gasification. So Berend, you have the floor.
Bom dia, good morning everyone. My name is Berend Vreugdenhil. I will do this presentation in English, not in Dutch. And my presentation is about biomass gasification to produce methane. I will very briefly introduce TNO, the organization I'm working for. It's the largest Dutch research organization focusing on, well, topics relevant for Dutch society. So we have 6 divisions focusing on ICT, healthcare, defense, but also on energy and materials transition. So how to come from a fossil-based system producing energy and products to a, well, less fossil-based, let me put it like that. I'm working on gasification. I'm responsible for synthetic and sustainable fuels and chemicals. And in this presentation I will focus on gasification. So to highlight a little bit the different pathways to methane, I found this picture from Erich. The publication is in the bottom, but basically it shows that if you have wet streams, you can go via biological processes, anaerobic digestion, and we have a speaker talking about this coming up. You can also go through thermal processes, typically looking at solid feedstocks, a bit more dry, and then you make a synthesis or a producer gas which is upgraded to methane. You can upgrade it to various products, by the way, but methane is one of them. And then there's the third option, which is e-methane, where you look into using electricity combined with a CO2 source to make methane synthetically. I don't think this is viable in many places in the world, but I think the previous speaker showed that in some places the abundance of electricity actually allows these pathways to be developed. But for me and for now, I will focus on the gasification pathway. So what is driving gasification? If you look into the technology, typically it's used for many applications. It's heat and power, it's methane, it's hydrogen, it's fuels like methanol or SAF. And then there's regulations that push this. So there's EU regulation that basically demands a certain share of renewables in the grid, but also in fuels. And you cannot achieve that with one silver bullet. So it's a combination of different technologies, and this is promoting gasification as a technology. Then the EU has a non-binding target of 35 BCM on renewable gas, renewable methane production by 2030. And that's actually very nearby. And this needs to be achieved with biogas upgrading and with gasification. So this is pushing gasification. Looking into the Dutch situation, you have a national technology strategy where gasification as a technology is identified as crucial to produce fuels. That's including methane, methanol, SAF. It's also identified as a crucial technology or a key technology for dealing with waste streams in order to valorize the waste better than just landfilling or burning it. Then in the Netherlands we have a blending obligation, so it's not like the EU and non-binding, but really we have to achieve a certain amount of green gas into our grid by 2030. It used to be 1.6 BCM, but it's later adjusted to 1.1 BCM. Currently we're, I believe, somewhere between 30 and 40 BCM annually in the consumption, so it's not that much. But we're also not producing a lot of biomethane at the moment as well. It's about 0.3 BCM, so we have a very long way to go until 2030. Then there's also a climate fund program, and this is a preliminary multi-annual plan. Again, in there, gasification is identified as a key technology to biofuels and materials. And actually in this plan they allocated 100 million euros, in fact it's 93 million, a little bit less, for early scale-up projects. So you are eligible for 30 million per project for projects producing green gas via gasification or biofuels. So these are, for the Netherlands, really large projects. And next year there's a reservation mentioned of 500 million euros for these type of projects, and a reservation of 25 million for a gasification expertise center in order to build up and maintain the knowledge. So you see in the Netherlands there's a lot of drivers for gasification to methane to fuels. Well, the previous speaker also mentioned topics related to SAF. I think SAF is one of those pathways where part of the solution is gasification, so that's also going to drive gasification technology to be deployed. And then a little bit about the need. I talked about the 1.1 BCM by 2030 for the Netherlands. Now let's assume that you can do half of this by digestion. I think the sector in the Netherlands calculated 0.4, but let's assume it's half. Then the other half has to come from gasification. Well, at TNO we're working on this for already 15 years. We think an entry-level plant is about 30 megawatt thermal input, producing roughly 40 million cubic meters per year. So then you can calculate that you need to build 14 plants of this size in the Netherlands before 2030. There is nothing at the moment. So just to give you an idea how much we need to build up, 14 plants starting today with nothing. Then you can do the same for the Europe situation. It's a non-binding target, but let's assume that we actually have the ambition to achieve this. And let's assume also that in Europe we have the capabilities to produce a bit more through digestion. There's also a lot more already ongoing in countries like Germany and Denmark. So let's assume 80%. That leaves about 7 billion cubic meters of natural gas through gasification. Well, with the same metrics as the other example, this is 175 plants that we need to achieve in the coming 5 years. Again, there is nothing in Europe that's producing methane through gasification. So the perspective is actually quite good. If you are successful, you have you have many replications that you can achieve before 2030. There's also barriers. My colleagues from TNO in 2022, they published a report specifically on green gas, identifying what are the barriers observed in the Netherlands, why it's not taking off the way we want. And higher cost is a problematic one. You start with a plant that you've never built before. Perhaps you oversell it that it's cheaper in order to get the project, but then when you start doing the feed studies, it's always a bit more expensive. The OPEX is a bit higher. The duration of construction will take longer, and often also your efficiency for a first plant, which is not optimized yet, is also lower than your theoretical efficiency. Subsidies in the Netherlands for green gas for the long term, that's insufficient for the unprofitable top. The cost reduction in technologies has not yet taken place. We have not had one replication, so you cannot have the improvements in place. And the support schemes, they talk about availability of 7,500 hours a year. Well, I think anyone working in the field understands that this is not realistic for a first-of-a-kind plant. So that needs to be built up to 7,500 hours, and that takes about, 4 to 6 years probably. So this is all in all not very well. These are the barriers we have to deal with. Then there's other barriers as well, and I would like to learn or to teach you a nice word, zwabberend. Zwabberend beleid, it's a Dutch word, but it's basically meaning that the policies, they change from year to year, diverging policies. First we had the blending obligation, 1.6, then recently it's been reduced to 1.1. So the message you send to the industry is, well, maybe we're going to go lower in a few years even more, and then the gasification pathway probably is not needed anymore. So who is going to invest? The second topic, the first, it was the absolute number, so it was a volume-based amount, and now it's looking into the greenhouse gas reduction. And then if you look into manure digestion, it has a very good carbon intensity. So even with less than 1.1 BCM, you can reach our GHG targets that we have set to this. So again, it's not really helping the gasification pathway. Then there is the issue with Europe, because initially the idea of the Netherlands, and that I think was actually a good idea, is we want to build up the industry in the Netherlands, so we only want plants built in the Netherlands and injected in the Netherlands. But Europe says, whoa, you cannot do that, you're part of Europe, it's an open market, which makes sense, but the problem is it might lead to methane coming from Germany and Denmark without new capacity being built, but just because the policy or the profitability in the Netherlands is so good, people are just pumping it to the Netherlands. And the last one is, you see in the Netherlands there's 1-2 projects on green gas, and there's about 7 looking into fuel production, methanol mainly. So you see the market is actually looking into something else than green gas. So although there is a big need and we have a big problem, you don't see the market developing the green gas projects, but more the fuel projects. Then a little bit on the perspectives. So and I would like to highlight two things. One is if you build a gasification plant, and this holds for fuel, SAF, methanol, methane. If you build a plant and you introduce a power-to-X concept, so an electrolyzer to produce hydrogen with renewable energy, then you can basically double the output. So in our case, you don't have to build 14 plants, but you can do with 7 plants, and just add electrolyzers to convert electricity into hydrogen and convert CO2 into methane. This is a perspective which I think is important to keep in mind. I don't believe that for the European situation, in most places it will be successful before 2030, but it's good to keep in mind, and it's good to keep in mind that this is for all the gasification pathways. What's even better is that if you don't have renewable electricity, you do have the source of CO2. So in 2018, we did a report within the IEA Bioenergy task group I'm leading. We looked at fuel, so SAF, and we looked at green gas, and we took the Dutch case. The study assumed SAF production at 600 megawatt and green gas at 600 megawatts, so in the Rotterdam area where you can import sufficient feedstock, roughly an equivalent of 0.3 BCM, so that's it's not even our target, but it's getting close. And then if you look into the carbon balance, you see that the carbon ends up in the product, so that's the SNG. That basically means that you're avoiding 600 kiloton per year of CO2 emissions from burning fossil fuels. But in order to inject into the grid, you have to deal with the excess CO2 in your process, which is roughly 590 kilotons, so almost the equivalent. And that's also why I say with power-to-X you can double the output. So that's coming out of your system in order to inject, and you don't vent it to the atmosphere, you do something with it. You create negative emissions, so you store it underground. And then in this particular case, and that's because we started with an indirect gasifier, you also have a flue gas, which is highlighted in the picture on the left. And the flue gas is just part of the gas, the combustion of your feedstock in order to generate the heat for the process. It's coming out, it's an equivalent of about almost 500 kiloton per annum. So with these technologies you can generate negative emissions which actually help us even further in reducing the CO2 in the atmosphere. So that's the nice things about gasification-based technologies, the inclusion of hydrogen, or the negative emissions that you can achieve. So the conclusions is that in Europe we have a very big challenge in order to realize our targets, almost 200 plants in 5 years. I think if you count it's maybe 5 years and then it's 2030. So there's a lot of things to be done. You do see the increase in support through mandates and regulatory systems for both green gas and fuels. So I think the outlook is very positive. And then the upsides is also that you can work on power-to-X concepts. You should probably pick the regions like in Brazil or maybe in the Nordic countries where there's more renewable electricity available. And definitely you should look at the negative emissions. So you always need to deal with the CO2, store it, in my opinion, is the best. But you can also utilize it to avoid CO2 from fossil fuels. And to stop with a nice ending, this picture is the Go Biogas plant in Sweden, which is roughly a 32 megawatt plant producing SNG. It was a technical success, so they injected into the grid. They had operational hours. Financially, this demonstration wasn't viable, and yeah, because of that, eventually the plant got stopped. I think that was a big mistake, but just to show that the technology is ready to deliver, that's why I included this picture. And with that, I would like to end. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Berend, again for this inspiring presentation, which both covered, I think, the technical aspects, economic aspects, and also the regulatory aspects, I think, which are also of key importance for further developing these technologies. And so we have, again, time for, well, 1 or 2 questions. Okay, I see one there. Please wait for the mic, and then there's a second one further up. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks very much for a very comprehensive presentation. Perhaps I didn't get it. What's the value of the production cost or the minimum selling price of the methane from gasification and compared with the natural gas that you have nowadays?
It's not comparable to natural gas at the moment. It's still more expensive. I think we end up between 60 to 80 euros per megawatt hour after you have the replication going, because the first of a kind will be a bit higher, but that's the prognosis where we will end up with.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a second question in the middle. Yeah, and then the third one, and then I think we have to continue.
Thank you very much for presentation. My name is Mateus from Raizen. I'd like to ask two questions. Actually, one, can you comment about the regulation of BECCS in Europe, right? Especially after you have used the well, right? What happens, who is responsible, and so on. And the second question, I'm not familiar to any BECCS project in Europe. Can you comment why this is not moving forward, especially in biomethane or ethanol production from sugar beet?
Sorry, both questions is not my field of expertise. But there's people from IEA Bioenergy that deal with BECCS, and they can tell you more.
If I have the program well in mind, we will have a session where also BECCS will be a subject this afternoon. So, and I think one of the persons to contact to speak is Christiane Hennig. I think she will be a speaker there. So we have a third and final question, please.
Yes, Roberto Bille from BTG Bioliquids. My question, first of all, Berend, congratulations for your presentation. It was very informative. My question is related to the availability of biomass for this 200, not only for the 200 gasification or syngas plants you showed, but considering that even beyond 2030, there will be need for other projects for such as pyrolysis, for example. So my question is this secured biomass sources for all those projects for the long run?
I think that's a good topic. I think if you look at where we stand today, there's not so many big projects consuming the biomass, and there is a lot available. It needs to be mobilized, so you need to make it into a commodity. Or in our case, we're talking about demolition wood. That's actually in place for several plants, not for all. It's a topic to keep in mind and to develop, but without technology consuming the feedstock, this is also not really being developed, I would say, in the world. But if you look, for instance, into the UK situation with Drex, which consumes a lot of biomass, if you build something, these flows will start coming. But if you don't have anything, nothing is mobilized. But there is sufficient feedstock for the 200 plants. There will be sufficient feedstock, I'm sure of that.
Just adding to your comment, there is a task, I think, a target in the European Union for making 2 billion tons of biomass available. I think it's until 2050. So I don't know if 2 billion tons will be enough. So it's just
that's a lot.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again, Berend. Well, so we will move now to the next presentation, and we will move from the thermochemical conversion path to the biochemical conversion path, and I'm happy to welcome Jan Liebetrau from the company Rytec in Germany, and also leader of Task 37, Biogas. So, Jan, you have the floor, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for the chance to introduce biogas technology, biogas systems here to you. I'm already enjoying for a few days Brazil here, and I only can say that I really like the country. I would like to start with some publications we did in the past on several topics. Whatever I will present here today is based on these publications from Task 37, Energy from Biomass, and you can find them also on our website. I would like to start from one of our publications. It's a position paper with some general statements on biogas, just to give a little introduction in where we start with biogas systems. That's a proven technology. We have several thousand plants all over the world in different sectors. And you could say that every plant is an individual plant. So that's a really bespoke solution, and that's a curse and a blessing, both of it. The blessing is that you really can adjust, you can customize the plants to the needs of the site, to the substrate, to the infrastructure, but there's also some room for mischoices, and if you do things wrong, then you might end up with a dysfunctional plant. So it's really knowledge, what you need to make the plant successful. We need more than renewable electricity, this was already said, and renewable gas and liquid fuels are, and the carbon source also for that is very, very important. Biomethane can fit into the existing gas infrastructure, and that's, from my point of view, a big advantage compared to hydrogen. We have seen what just Berend said. We have targets until 2030. We have also targets until 2050. And if I see what effort it will need to implement renewable gas structures, infrastructure for hydrogen, for instance, then I don't see that we can achieve these targets very quickly. Biogas is ready now. We are able to feed into natural gas networks, and also the utilization side is there. We have all the applications of natural gas which can be, without any change, used for biomethane. We need a lot of solutions, so I'm not saying that biomethane can solve all the problems. This is also what Berend said. There is no silver bullet, but we can contribute. And biogas solutions come with more than just energy and renewable gas. We have a lot of effects, like we have a reduction of fugitive methane emissions. In the waste and in the agriculture sector, we can protect water quality by better utilization of the digestate and manure. We reduce pathogens in manures and waste. We produce biofertilizers, we reduce smell. And all this should be accounted for. I'm not claiming that we get paid for that, because that will be very, very difficult, but at least it should be accounted for. We have different substrates. Biogas can actually handle all organic substrate except lignin. But this is also curse and blessing, because all those substrates appear in different sectors. It's a whole different story if you deal with a municipality or do some support schemes for municipalities compared to industry or compared to farmers. These are all different sectors. People have different targets, different approaches, so that makes things not always easy. The other side is also the utilization. We have a lot of pathways, and there's not easy either to do the right choice. In particular, if you have different support schemes in these different sectors, you have to choose which one is the most beneficial for your plant. Biogas plant can be operated very flexible. I will elaborate on that later on. And they even can function as an energy sink. If you think of power to gas or power to heat, then biogas plants can also help to stabilize the grid. Economics, there was just a question, comparison to natural gas. This is not the right question, I think. We need to compare renewable gases with renewable gases. We are not staying with fossil, and that's why we need to talk about what are the alternatives to biomethane. And hydrogen is, at the moment, more expensive, and it will stay for a long time, from my perspective, more expensive than biomethane. The incentives for biomethane and biogas should reflect on the actual costs. It doesn't make sense to support, let's say, a little bit. Then industry will not react on that. So whoever is wanting to invest something in such a renewable plant needs to be sure that there's a certain perspective for an income and that he will be able to get revenue from the plant. And I personally think that a carbon tax will solve a lot of problems we face at the moment. We have a lot of niche subsidies which develop niche markets for certain renewable energy products. A carbon tax could cover this all, and then every technology would find its particular application. And this holds true for hydrogen and as well for biomethane. Now I would like to go into flexible operation of plants. And to start with, we have with an increasing share of solar and wind in the energy system, a higher flexibility. The demand has a certain flexibility over the day and over the season, and the production has a flexibility. And renewable sources can only be controlled in a limited way to match those two. Biogas plants can do that to a certain extent, but that means that you have to install overcapacity. If you want to ramp up and down your process, you need to have idle capacity, and this adds costs. And this needs to be balanced by the benefits of this flexible operation. What you usually do at the biogas plant, you add the CHP, and you add the gas storage, and you have to adjust some infrastructure at the plant, but then you are able to ramp up and down the process. This looks like that. On the left slide figure, you can see the energy production, the orange bars. This is the energy production for the plant. This small CHP, this is running 24/7 to operate the plant. And then the gas, which is to produce the electricity for the grid, is only be converted in 10 hours of the day here in 2 blocks. And that means you need to have a gas storage to handle that. And in the right graph, you can see the filling level of the gas storage in this orange line. And here we calculated 6,000 cubic meters of gas storage are necessary to deal with that. Now, it's a whole different story if you repeat that block, what I just showed, every day. This is on-off operation. It's not easy, but this is much more easy than the lower picture here, which shows that you are really reacting in a dynamic way on the market development. So you have always a prognosis of the market, of the next hours, of the next day, and then you react with your process on that. We have that in Germany already. There are some plants which are remotely controlled from electricity traders, and they tell the plant operator how to operate. I'll skip over that. Just a few words. Of course, the CHP is the most expensive part of this additional cost, but also maintenance for the CHP will increase in cost if you have starts and stops during the day. There is revenue from that comes from the market. So you can see this orange, this is the price development over the day. And if you produce electricity in these high price area, you get a little bit more revenue. At the moment, the costs in Germany for sure do not cover, or the benefits which you achieve from that operation do not cover the costs. You have an extra support scheme where this flexibility is actually supported by the Renewable Energy Sources Act. This is an example of a large plant in Germany. You find that in our publication, so I don't want to explain it in detail. Just one sentence here. You always have to think of the heat as well. So if you have a heat customer on your site and you have a flexible operation, you need also to have a heat storage in order to balance this flexible production out. In this case, here is 1,000 cubic meter storage. And flexible operation needs to be bundled. And there are now in Germany, and in this example here also in Switzerland, examples of companies who are bundling a lot of renewable electricity producers and then going with these larger amounts with virtual power plants on the market and deal the products there. I have a couple of examples for perspective, and one of this is the CO2 utilization at the biogas plant. Biogas has 45 to 50% CO2, and this is also an important source in the future for carbon, renewable carbon, either to substitute fossil carbon or for gaseous and liquid fuels of the future. We have this upgrading process when we produce biomethane to feed into the grid, and this produces, of course, also a off-gas stream with a very high concentration of carbon dioxide. Most of the technologies have a purity of 99% or even more. Many plants at the moment check on the feasibilities. Some also apply the separation and liquefaction. And this is an example here in Switzerland, where such a CO2 upgrading and liquefaction has been installed in addition to an existing upgrading facility based on the membrane technology. This is the process. So you have a compressor, you have an adsorption dryer, you need a direct contact cooler, condensation, stripping, storage. Issue here is there to achieve the quality which is required. In that case, it's food grade quality, and that requires a very high and sophisticated cleaning technology, and also the monitoring of the process is quite important. And also the energy demand of these facilities is quite high. So you can see the numbers here. The manufacturers will give you a little bit lower numbers on that. This is the first year of operation. Berend already explained how this is when you start up a new process. So I assume that to be lower in the future, but it's not negligible. It's actually quite expensive. And this you need to offset with your income from the renewable carbon. The other option is to go to power to gas. So you mix essentially the CO2 with hydrogen from electrolyzer, and you produce methane, an e-fuel, and you can deal with that in the same way as you would do it for the anaerobic digestion-based biomethane. However, here the costs are also driven by the electricity cost, because the electrolyzer is fed by electricity, and this rules the price for the power to gas. And this is much more expensive at the moment, even the hydrogen, than the biomethane based on anaerobic digestion. There are several companies with pilot phase plants here. They are based on catalytic methanation or on biological methanation. We are, of course, interested in the biological part, and this is here an example in Germany, which has been also published in one of our studies. So to conclude, biogenic CO2 will be increasingly required, I think. The overall market for CO2 at the moment is not very big, but the future market for maybe CCS or for e-fuels might be a different story, so we are looking forward to that. There are also other activities, like a Swiss company who is actually using the CO2 to apply this to construction waste, and this construction waste is actually binding the CO2, and then they recycle this waste, and so this is a CO2 sink, and this is actually also quite a good solution. Power to gas might be an option to reduce the effort on the purification of the CO2, and at the moment this market is not economically viable. There are municipalities who decide for this, but it's not really taking off, but I hope in the future we will see more there. This was my last slide, and I'm open for questions.
Well, thank you very much, Jan, for presenting the second key pathway for the biomethane production. So again, we have time for maybe 2 questions. Okay, I see one there on the right side, rather up. Michael, if I see well.
Michael Wang,
Yeah.
from US Argonne National Laboratory. Jan, thank you for the presentation. I have a specific question on the biomethane project. I know Germany has been very extensive to build project. One of the key issues for greenhouse gas footprint is the methane leakage from the AD system. Do you have any data from German project, the methane leakage from AD system? we've seen sometimes 2%, sometimes even as high as 5%. Because your 5% of methane leakage can have significant impact for GHG emissions.
On that topic, I could talk for hours. First of all, you have to make the distinction between emissions and leakage. Leakage is an unwanted emission source which shouldn't be there. The plant is supposed to be gas tight. If you have a leakage, that's a malfunction, and you should avoid that. Although we have leakages, like everywhere, and we have a very similar situation in biogas plants like we have it in natural gas. We have, statistically, we have a few leakages which contributes to a large extent to the overall emissions. So the target, from my point of view, needs to be to have leak detection and a certain frequency to avoid such events and to avoid such leakages. And then you won't see 5%. The other thing is the emissions. We have upgrading facilities, they have an off gas. If this is not treated, this is an emission source. We have open digestate storage. This is an emission source. And when you calculate in the first place what your target is, you can do a lot here by choosing technology which avoids emissions or reduces emissions, and then you can really control the overall emissions. So 2 things, technology choice in the first place, 3 things. Good operation of the plant and leak detection and avoidance of unwanted situations. This is what I only can recommend. IEA Bioenergy has also a publication on methane emissions, so check on our website and read about that.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Jan. I think we have to move forward. So thanks again. So we move back to Brazil. So the next presenter will be Bruna Moraes from the University of Campinas. And so I think from the general overview, we will move to a more specific case now. So looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. And well, I will talk about the biohydrogen and biomethane production from municipal solid waste at Unicamp, proposing an innovative living lab. As he said, I'm Bruna Moraes, a researcher and currently the coordinator of NIP. NIP is the, NIP is the Center for Energy Planning. It's one research center of Unicamp that operates by integrating academic and technological research, integrating also the private and the public sectors by means of the development of joint projects in the fields of energy and bioenergy. And we strongly believe that research, development, and innovation and application are the key initiatives to leverage sustainable development based on energy and bioenergy. And one of the projects that I would like to highlight here is the São Paulo Center for Biogas and Bioproduct Studies, which is a project from NIP, and it was recently approved by FAPESP in the program of Center Science for Development, and I'm the coordinator of this research center. And the center is dedicated to the theme of intelligent use of residues for the sustainable development, and aims to create science skills that lead to the development and application of innovative solutions. In São Paulo State, there is a lot of available substrates with a potential of more than 4.5 billion cubic meters of biogas per year, and as well as a great demand for its use. but actually only a fraction is used nowadays, okay? And considering the scenario, the center focus on the management and of the organic and lignocellulosic wastes from the urban and agricultural sectors, giving priority to initiatives aimed at public management and strategic sectors from the economy of São Paulo, like the sugar energy sector. So the role of CP2B is to create new knowledge and skills that lead to solutions applicable to biogas in São Paulo and to articulate joint actions in the industrial, political, social, and environmental spheres. And for achieving this, the center has some important partners from the universities and research centers, such as the Federal University of Alfenas, University of São Paulo, the Zootecnia Institute, the Agronomic Institute of Campinas, some companies, also the Unidade Embrapi e Renova from Unicamp, Amplum Biogas, Sabesp, which is a sanitation company from São Paulo State, Copercana, a huge cooperative in the agro sector of Brazil, Comgás, a gas distributor of São Paulo State, and also the government represented by the Secretary of Agriculture of São Paulo and the Municipal Secretary of Climate and Environment of Campinas. And also we have international partners like TU Delft, the University of Cádiz, and the National Laboratory of Energy and Geology from Portugal. Okay, so the proposal is the development and implementation of an innovative pilot plant for biogas production from the organic fraction of municipal solid waste of Unicamp, initially represented by the food waste generated from the restaurants. The fundament is to use the cutting-edge knowledge integrated to the application in the context of a living lab. So the biogas system will be composed of two phases: biogas production, and in this case, the idea is to produce biohydrogen in an acidogenic reactor and biomethane in a second methanogenic reactor, and focus on the use of these biofuels for in the buses of the university. So the study would be in the pure biomethane use or biomethane enriched with biohydrogen. And from the purification step, we would have the CO2 recovery also. And also the digestate, the traditional bioproduct from this process, to be used as a fertilizer. Actually, the research would be to formulate this digestate in order to become not only a digestate, but a biofertilizer for the agricultural crops in Brazil. Okay. All right, and why food waste? Well, the university restaurant generates 1.5 tons of food waste per day. And nowadays, this amount is just sent to a landfill close to Campinas, in Paulínia. It's a city close to Campinas. And the previous studies of NIP showed the potential for the generation of more than 5,000 cubic meters of biogas per year, which correspond to 11 daily trips on the campus buses. It's important to note that these studies were performed when the generation of the food waste was 800 kilograms per year. So today, the biogas production could even be higher. Okay? And another important point here is that this concept could be replicated in another scenarios where the organic fraction of of municipal solid waste is separated at the source. For example, shopping centers, restaurants, public schools, and in this scenario, it would be possible to attract new customers and partners, and also guiding public policies. And another important thing here is that in a living lab concept, it's possible to perform a real-time research and development. So the idea is that this pilot plant will be available for researchers, for students and partners to perform innovations in the plant. And another point is, in this context, the idea is to integrate the fundamental and the applied R&D, and also to provide an interdisciplinary collaboration among the researchers, students, and the industry partners to foster the real-time R&D. Yeah, and apart from the R&D topic, this concept would be used as educational platform because it will be possible to promote the awareness and engagement in sustainable practice within the community. So there's an educational objective behind the whole concept, okay? And the outcomes of these projects are expected to pave the way for scalable solutions in bioenergy production, supporting Unicamp's commitment to sustainability and innovation. So the message I'd like to deliver here is that from the activities of this center, the idea is to create, integrate, develop, incubate, and showcase intelligent residues use for sustainable development by integrating the science, technology, education, and the government. I would like to thank your attention, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We are running a little late, but so time for one question. No question right now? Oh, okay. Thanks again for the presentation. Please stay here. And we come to the final speakers then. But we give a second applause. So the final presentation will be made by Julio Meneghini from the University of Sao Paulo, and his topic is hydrogen production from bioethanol. Please, you have the floor.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. And, well, today I'm going to try to be quick and show some work that we have been doing at the University of São Paulo together with some other universities. And then this work is carried out at the Research Center for Greenhouse Gas Innovation. That's a center located in where we call here in Brazil the Brazilian Blue Tech Corridor. It's like the Silicon Valley in the US. We consider this region where University of São Paulo, University of Campinas, University of the State of São Paulo, ITA, the Aeronautical College for Aeronautical Engineering, are located, and some other universities as well. And it's interesting just to notice that, let me see if I, well, in this corridor, we are responsible for almost 50% of the total Brazilian scientific production. And the work that we had before starting the Research Center for Greenhouse Gas Innovation We worked a lot with the Brazilian oil company Petrobras for very deep water oil production, and usually what I say now is that I'm trying to pay my sins and put the CO2 back from where we helped in the past 20 years Petrobras to put out to the atmosphere, and now we are working a lot with CCS. And then also we worked a lot with the Brazilian airplane manufacturer, Embraer, that's one of the 3 biggest airplane manufacturers, and we worked a lot. And with the experience that we had, we started our research center for greenhouse gas innovation 3 years ago. It's part of a program sponsored by FAPESP and private companies. And this center now is the biggest center at the University of São Paulo, with more than 600 researchers working. And as a mission, we have, well, to try to help Brazil to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And in terms of vision, we think that becoming a globally recognized center of excellence is our main goal. And action towards a transdisciplinary approach in which we have people from biology, engineers a lot, of course, but biologists, chemical engineers, physicists, chemistry people, and even psychologists and lawyers. And the sponsors are, the founder sponsors are FAPESP and Shell, and now we have the, as sponsors later on Total Energies, Petronas, Petrobras, Braskem, and some other companies. And as national partners, we have a lot of other universities in São Paulo state and also in other Brazilian states. And we have also a lot of collaborations with some international partners that I'm just going to show very soon. Well, this is just a timetable of the center. In 2021, we started this new phase as a center for greenhouse gas. And you can see here somewhere, let me see if I can. Here is the governor of São Paulo state at that time, Governor João Doria. He came to the inauguration. And here last year, we started the construction of our hydrogen plant from ethanol. And then the governor of São Paulo state last year came to our center. And also the finance minister came to visit us, Fernando Haddad, and we showed some plans for Brazil to become a real leader in terms of hydrogen and sustainable hydrogen, and also fuels of the future. We presented him a plan that now is being put in action. These are just some numbers of RCGI. As I said, we have more than 600 researchers, a lot of, well, almost 10 patents, fillings, and books and papers in conference. Well, these are the numbers. And in terms of gender, we are trying to increase the number of women. Now we are at about 30%, and we are trying to increase that number. The main programs of RCGI is nature-based solutions that we work together with the Agricultural College from University of São Paulo that's located at Piracicaba. Bioenergy, carbon capture and storage, where the pilot plant to produce hydrogen from ethanol is in that program. CCU, carbon capture and utilization program. We have next year a plant to produce green methanol from biogenic CO2 and green hydrogen. And we are going to produce about 1,000 liters per week of green ethanol. Greenhouse gas is another program that involves the design, for instance, of labyrinth seals to reduce methane slip in big compressors. Advocacy, it's another program that we have that is the soft part of our center, soft science. in which we have people working with public perception, social perception, license to operate. Innova Power, that's a program sponsored by Total Energy to decarbonize the operations of oil and gas production offshore in Brazil. Decarbonization, that's the program sponsored by Petronas, in which we have some projects related to remove lithium and boron from water, from oil and gas production, and then do some other use to that lithium and boron. And the center-to-center collaboration is where we have our international collaborations. We have a center-to-center collaboration with POITS, that's a NSF center, a National Science Foundation sponsored center in US, and another one with CSTAR. And with Imperial College, we have a SPEC program that is São Paulo Excellent Chair, in which we are working with solid oxide fuel cells. And the routes to Brazil to decarbonize, well, we believe that we have a great potential if you consider not only onshore but also offshore. Brazil has a huge potential for wind energy offshore. We have a huge potential also to produce blue hydrogen and then to do CCS in salt caverns and other sites in the Brazilian offshore region, together with the onshore efforts that Brazil is really one of the leading countries in terms of biofuel, to use ethanol as a vector to produce, for instance, hydrogen, and to do also carbon capture and storage with bioenergy, and then to make the Brazilian ethanol not only neutral in terms of CO2 footprint, but even negative. And with this negative ethanol, we could produce a negative footprint hydrogen that neither the solar or wind could achieve. And then, now talking about the plant, well, this is a project that has been sponsored by Shell, mainly by Shell, but also by Raízen. And it's a technology that has been developed by a Brazilian startup called Hydron. And this is a work that started more than 10 years ago in Unicamp with Professor Enio Silva. And then their students started Hydron more than 10 years ago, and now they developed that technology, and we are going to use in São Paulo University. And our main objective is first to use for buses in University of São Paulo. We just published a paper in the Journal of Hydrogen Energy, I think, or it has been published or is about to be published in the next issue, to show that University of São Paulo could avoid emitting about 2,000 tons of CO2 per year if we change the buses from diesel to the hydrogen produced from ethanol. And this is just an example of what we have here. I'm going just to show some photos of the plant very soon. But this is a figure just to show the potential of the Brazilian ethanol if we employ not only first generation but second generation ethanol. Few people know that Brazil has the only commercial plant producing more than 50 million liters of second generation of ethanol in Piracicaba. Most of this second generation ethanol is exported. And using BECS with second generation ethanol, we have the potential to have a negative CO2 footprint. These are just some numbers that we used in a paper, a white paper that we published in the Brazilian Academy of Science last year, showing that if you take the average of about 25 grams of CO2 per megajoule of ethanol, using second generation, that could be reduced to less than 18 grams of CO2 per megajoule ethanol. And if you include BECCS in the sense not using fossil fuel fertilizers, using biofertilizers, and also not using diesel for the production and transportation of ethanol, but to use biomethane, we could achieve this number here of minus 25 grams of CO2 per megajoule. And if you use this ethanol to produce hydrogen, you could, have a negative CO2 footprint ethanol. And this is some general numbers from our plant. These numbers is how much, I can tell you it's about 7 liters of ethanol per kilo of hydrogen, and we are going to produce 100 kilos of hydrogen per day. That's enough for more than 6 buses plus 5 or 6 light vehicles to run with that hydrogen. And here the numbers, electricity is about that, and then if you take this number here, it's much less than what this number, if you consider per kilo of hydrogen, is about 2.5 kilowatts hour of electricity per kilo of hydrogen, is less than 20 times the need of electricity if you consider hydrolysis to produce hydrogen. And then I just have, this is a video, I don't know if it's going, this is the pilot plant, is absolutely red. We are going to start producing in the next couple of weeks. We are now in the phase of the final assembly parts, and we are going to start producing hydrogen in the next 2 weeks to start the commissioning phase of this plant. And this is going to be ready very soon. And these are the final slides that I'm going to show. The potential to produce second generation ethanol. This is a paper that has been published by Physics Today, those who are members of the American Physical Society receives this magazine every week or every month. I think it's every month. And in August 22, they showed that the only cellulosic ethanol plant is in Brazil and is the one producing 50 million liters of ethanol per year. And this is another paper that has been published by people, and Marcus Bucherich, who is the guy who is the director of our program, of our BECCS program. He published in 2017, just showing the potential to employ degraded land in Brazil to produce ethanol, and then we would be able to fulfill about 3% of the oil production that goes, the world oil production that goes to transportation. And finally, this is the final slide, is the paper that the white paper that the Brazilian Academy of Science wrote last year, just showing the potential of Brazil to become one of the leaders in terms of biofuel and hydrogen, sustainable hydrogen, low carbon intensity hydrogen, and fuels of the future. And this is the conclusion, that the potential is not a solution for the world, is not the, how can I say, we are not able to fulfill all the needs for hydrogen using ethanol, but at least in Brazil we could employ that. And the preliminary results shows that this hydrogen is going to be less than 4 kilos of CO2 per kilo of hydrogen in terms of CO2 footprint. Then it is going to be considered green hydrogen even in Europe or in the US. And if we use second generation ethanol plus BECCS, there is a potential to even to decrease that CO2 footprint. Thank you very much for your attention.
So thank you very much, Julio, for your presentation. I think we have one question, time for one direct question to your presentation, and then we'll steal a few minutes from the coffee break for final discussion, final questions. And so, there's a question here in the middle, please.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. I'm Miguel Sanchez from Futuria Fuels. Maybe one question. With this technology, could you also produce syngas from ethanol?
Yeah, well, if you take the whole process of production of hydrogen, you produce syngas, in the syngas plus even methane, you have the production of methane, and then what we are doing is there is PSA and plus membranes to purify the hydrogen and to use the syngas plus the methane to keep the temperature for the steam reform of ethanol, because the process is steam reform. We are working also with solid oxide fuel cells in another project, but in that case, in the case that I just showed, is a more mature technology developed by Hydron. You have the production of syngas in the middle of the process plus methane as well.
Okay, thank you again. Oh, please have a seat. So I think, well, for the past 5 presentations, I think we got a quite complete overview, both from the technology side and up to the framework conditions, and both for biomethane and biohydrogen. So my question maybe to the panel after this presentation is, well, do we have a clearer view? Is there a silver bullet in this area, or is it something really depending on the framework conditions? Well, maybe I start with you then.
Well, I think that in the years to come, we have a huge challenge to transition from a fossil fuel-based energy mix. Even in Brazil, when we talk about energy mix in Brazil, we always fixed in the electricity energy mix. That's 85% renewable energy. But if you take the whole Brazilian mix, we still have more than 30% coming from oil, and mainly for transportation, diesel. And then it's something that we have to work even in Brazil to decarbonize this sector. And only with, joint effort in Brazil, we are going to be able to displace diesel for transportation and then have more, how can I say, renewable transportation sector in Brazil.
Okay. Thank you. Bruna?
Well, yeah, in line of what Julio said, I think it's not like a competition between the fossil part and the renewable part. I think in this case we have to work together in order to provide the decarbonization of the fossil fuel, because we are extremely dependent on that. So it's not possible to only replace. So we have to study and to research on how we can perform joint projects in order to achieve a better way to live in the context that we have now, without the climate change and and for doing this, we need to make joint efforts in all the actors important to make the difference. I mean, to perform the actions that we need. And in my opinion, which is a big challenge, is how can we make such articulations to perform this? The articulations would be the research, the scientific research from the academic part and the technological part with the companies' partnership, because the academy needs to know what are the problems that we have in the real life, let's say this. And the companies know what are the problems regarding the technological part, I mean. But when we are including the society, we need to give a higher step on it. And that's why we need the joint articulation with the government, and the government in order to perform actions in the public policies. So I think this would be the best way to achieve the sustainable development that we are really looking for.
Okay, thank you. So, Jan, what are your views? I think, well, you had heard also a lot about the Brazilian situation here during the last 2 days, and also during the task meeting of task 37. So,
yeah, I'm actually quite impressed to see where Brazil is, and compared to Germany, I think we can learn a lot here. Or, yeah, it might be difficult. We don't have the water resources they have. For instance, we have visited Itaipu Dam. This is not possible in Germany. Our rivers are simply too small. But yeah, this shows what potential is there in the international world. And maybe coming to your silver bullet, I think we need framework conditions which force out fossil fuels. That competition, that economic competition on this framework conditions we have right now, renewables will not win. This is more expensive, and unfortunately politicians don't want to go out with this message, and there I see the big problem. So we need to have framework conditions that CO2 has a certain price, and this price needs to be that high that we really avoid that. And then we will see all the investments. We have done a lot of research. I mean, if I look at Berend, I think this technology would be possible if it's economically viable to run it, and then have a few plants, and then you can operate that stable. We have shown that with much more difficult processes than this one, and this will be possible. But as long as there are no economic conditions in favor for such systems, they will not happen, and oil and gas will just be kept as the major energy source, and fossil oil and gas. And that's, I think, is from my perspective, the silver bullet. We have done a lot of research. We have all kinds of technologies. They all could be developed, but simply the economics are not in favor of right now.
Thank you, Jan. So, Berend, do you share this view? Do you share this view, or do?
Yeah, I agree with what has been said. But is it on? No. I agree completely. But to the silver bullet, there is no one silver bullet. There's a bunch of silver bullets that we need. But what impresses me with Brazil is the sheer amount of feedstock that is available, and I think. That's something that we need to realize as a global community, that we're depending on natural gas, coal and oil, but we have so much renewable resources available around the world in countries that don't have oil or gas, and it's something that we should work more towards, that this becomes the thing we import. The commodities from Brazil maybe, the second generation ethanol is already going out of Brazil mostly. That's something we should work towards, because then you start building up a global market where biomass is a commodity or an end product if you turn it into methanol, and then you can combine that with the CCS options, which I think in essence almost all biogenic pathways have, that you have either biochar or CO2 coming out of your process. That's something we should really try to push more, because that will help us to get rid of fossil fuels.
Okay. Well, finally you.
When I talk to the people here in Brazil, thinking about the growing of biofuels, we have the research, but yeah, we have some things to research more, of course. There is the laws, the regulations, the frameworks, and we have like investors that want to invest in Brazil, but we don't have good projects. So we don't have like people who want to invest to build the project, like talk to who has the waste, the off-taker, who will produce the biomethane or biogas. So this is the lack nowadays in Brazil. Build the project, the pipeline of projects. So we are talking to, say, Biogas, our partner, to develop this kind of situation, this build of this project, because this is nowadays the lack to grow in the biofuels here in Brazil.
Okay, thank you. Well, I look into the audience. Is there any burning question or comment from the audience now? I don't think this is the case. Well, it's very difficult with the light here to look into the audience. So I think I would suggest we conclude this session. So I would like to thank all the speakers for the presentations and also you all for listening and for asking good questions and good comments. Thank you very much.